Part 4. Guilt makes us feel inferior. Many times people give you negative messages because it is the easiest way to manipulate you. If someone is trying to make you feel guilty, ask yourself, what do they want? Why are they doing this? Ask these questions instead of inwardly agreeing, yes, I am guilty and I must do what they say. Many parents manipulate their children with guilt because they were raised the same way. They tell lies to their children to make them feel less than. Some people are still manipulated by their relatives and friends when they grow up because, first of all, they don't respect themselves. Otherwise, they wouldn't let it happen. Secondly, they are manipulative themselves. Many of you live under a cloud of guilt. You always feel wrong, or that you are not doing the right thing, or apologizing to someone for something. You will not forgive yourself for something you did in the past. You berate yourself for a lot that goes on in your life. Let the cloud dissipate. You don't need to live that way any longer. Those of you who feel guilty can now learn to say no and call people on their nonsense. I'm not saying to be angry with them, but you don't have to play their game anymore. If saying no is new to you, say it very simply. No. No, I can't do that. Don't give excuses, or the manipulator will have ammunition to take you out of your decision. When people see that manipulating you doesn't work, they will stop. People will only control you as long as you allow them to. You may feel guilty the first time you say no. However, it gets easier the next few times. A woman at my lecture had a baby who was born with congenital heart disease. She felt guilty because she believed that it was her fault. She did something to the baby. Unfortunately, guilt does not solve anything. In her case, no one did anything wrong. I told her that I thought it could have been a sole choice for the baby and a lesson for the baby and the mother. My answer was for her to love the baby and love herself and stop feeling that she did something wrong. That sort of guilt would not heal anyone. If you do something that you are sorry about, stop doing it. If you did something in the past that you feel guilty about, forgive yourself. If you can make amends, do it. And don't repeat the action again. Every time guilt comes up in your life, ask yourself, what do I still believe about myself? Who am I trying to please? Notice the childhood beliefs that come up. When someone comes to me who has been involved in a car accident, there's usually guilt on a deep-seated level and a need for punishment. There can also be a lot of repressed hostility because we feel we don't have the right to speak up for ourselves. Guilt seeks punishment, so we can literally become our own judge, jury, and executioner, condemning ourselves to the self-imposed prison. We punish ourselves, and there is no one around to come to our defense. It's time to forgive ourselves and set ourselves free. One elderly lady at one of my seminars felt enormous guilt about her middle-aged son. He was an only child who grew up to be a very withdrawn person. She felt guilty because she was very strict with him while he was growing up. I explained that she had done the best she knew how to do at that time. I believe he chose her as a mother before he incarnated into this life. So on a spiritual level, he knew what he was doing. I told her that she was wasting all of her energy feeling guilty about something that she couldn't change. She sighed. It's such a shame that he's this way, and I'm sorry I did a bad job. You see, that's wasted energy because it doesn't help her son now, and it certainly doesn't help her. Guilt becomes a very heavy burden and makes people feel inferior. Instead, I told her that every time the feeling came up, she should say something like, "No, I don't want to feel that anymore. I am willing to learn and to love myself. I accept my son exactly as he is." If she continued to do this, the pattern would start to shift. Even if we don't know how to love ourselves, the fact that we are willing to love ourselves will create the difference. It's just not worth it to hold on to these patterns. The lesson is always love yourself. Her lesson was not to heal her son, but to love herself. He came into this life to love himself. She cannot do it for him, and he cannot do it for her. Organized religions are often really good at making people feel guilty. Many of them do some heavy numbers to keep people in line, especially when they are young. However, we are not little children anymore, and we don't have to be kept in line. We are adults who can decide what we want to believe. The child in us feels the guilt, but there is also the adult in us who can teach the child otherwise. When you hold your emotions down or hold things in, you create havoc within you. Love yourself enough to allow yourself to feel your emotions. Allow your feelings to come to the surface. You may find yourself crying for days or getting angry a lot. You may have to process quite a bit of old stuff. I suggest you do affirmations that make going through the process easier, smoother, and more comfortable. Don't also add judgment to your feelings. That only pushes the feelings down even more. If you are going through incredible dilemmas or crises, affirm that you are safe and that you are willing to feel. Affirming these positive feelings will bring about beneficial change. So this is a great chapter for today. Great lessons and understanding the guilt that we hold on, and how a lot of the time that can continue to recreate negative thought patterns and negative stories from our past. I'm curious to see what negative thought patterns you continue to tell yourself, or the guilt that you're holding on to from things that you were unaware of in the past. If you're interested in sharing, please write them in the comments, or you're more than welcome to email me and I can get back to you. I'd love to hear what goes on inside your brain today.